When building a tuner car, many of us begin with a plan. We search for the perfect car on forums, on eBay, at dealers, in hope of finding something ideal for the project we'd like to build. How will this chassis accept the power I'm feeding it? Can I fit the right size tires under those fenders? To which wheels does the engine send the power? I need a lot of parts. Will I get more value out of tuning a Mustang or an Audi? Do I need to get parts from Japan? From Europe? How much will that cost? We consider every angle and then we buy and tune accordingly. Conversely, when you're young, you don't necessarily have these options. Young people work with what they have, and even though they may not have chosen the car on which their build is based, the entire point of the build becomes about making the best of your resources. My first car was a Mercury minivan, so my tuning options were limited to rear seat removal and mattress installation. Cameron, on the other hand, was given a BMW E30. At the time, it was just an old BMW, but thanks to the internet, the 24 Hours of Lemons, and the E30's combination of lightweight and rear-wheel drive, it's developed a rabid cult following as a great starting point for a build. Now, I get to take the car that Cameron's father once assumed would end up in a ditch and use it to punish a set of tires.
I bet you were wondering when we were going to do an E30. It's been a long time, and finally we've gotten around to one that we feel is worthy of our trip to friggin' Reno. This is a 1989 BMW 325 IS Coupe, 2.5-liter 6-cylinder engine up front, 5-speed manual gearbox, and a turbo, making 19 pounds of boost. And although he doesn't know exactly what the power level is, my ass dyno tells me somewhere in the neighborhood of 385 horsepower. Oh, with a deliciously flat torque curve. This is a very small car to have a turbocharged inline-6 engine, 2,800 pounds. What I like about it is that it's still got balance. It's not a crazy burnout machine. Oh yes. It's got phenomenal power when you get your foot in it. It wasn't built to impress people on the internet. It was built to be the best driver that it could be for Cameron. And what I mean by that was he built a motor that made like 460 at the wheels, but it was peaky and it was crap to drive. So he went smaller with the turbo and went in favor of a wider torque band. I'm not sure exactly the torque figure here, but there is a lot of it over a very wide power band.
I've tried about 3 different turbos now. The very first build on this was basically a budget build. I went with a used whole set turbo off of a Dodge truck. And I thought it was great until I got, more experience, and I realized, it's really laggy, and just power delivery is not good. And then I went to a GT35 turbo. That ended up being even worse. I might have made the most peak horsepower there, but drivability wasn't too good. And I just sized it back down to the 20G turbo, and that gives me the broadest power band and the best drivability. It's got a dual pattern turbo cam, and the end result is, when the power kicks in, I have the turbo sized properly, so it comes onto full boost right at about the same time, so it really just packs a punch and takes off.
This chassis, very rigid actually, considering it's 25 years old, very tossable. He's got the Bilstein H&R combo suspension on here. Pretty good for an aftermarket BMW suspension. Usually BMWs are ruined by aftermarket suspension. Not so much here. It's probably because this is the combination they raised Spec E30 on. It rides really nice, very smooth roads in Reno, absorbs bumps well, and considering there's no back seat, it's just bare metal back there, not much actual road noise makes it into the cabin. The Bridgestone tires have really hard sidewalls. That's kind of what they're known for. They're good for autocross, they help with the turn in, but at the same time, I feel all the little pebbles and stuff on the road. He literally taught himself how to work on cars by building a turbo E30 at his house. And I love the stories. His dad gave him the car, you know, thought it would be kind of a write-off, and now here he is, 7 years later, and look at this thing. He takes it to the track, takes it to autocross. I'll tell you what, if this car doesn't run mid-11s in the quarter or better, I would be amazed.
Everything is, you know, do-it-yourself on it. I've welded the entire exhaust myself, had to teach myself how to weld just to do that. Had to teach myself how to tune, just to tune the car. And then, you know, had to do a head swap on it because the first head I broke a rocker arm on. Just, you know, can't stop like fiddling with the car. I'm on my, I don't know, 50th tune probably. Every time I drive it, I see a little point where I can adjust it. I got the car from my dad when I was 16. It was, you know, my first car. He basically thought I was going to wreck it. Instead, I, you know, took really good care of it and just kept building on it. You know, it's been hit. I've rebuilt it. I've done the body work. I mean, I don't let, you know, anyone else touch it. All my friends actually bought E30s. I had the first one. Now we all have E30s, and now they're actually all boosted also. Everyone just like on the weekend just comes over to my house and we just turbo them.
We've been out here in the sun all day, driving back and forth, running hard. We run cars harder than their owners run them, and that's usually when we find out that something's gonna break. On this car, temperature gauge hasn't moved up the smallest bit. We haven't been through very much gas at all. We're using a lot more from the meth injection than we thought we would be. There's about a half a tank of meth left, even though we've used less than a quarter of a tank of fuel. It's while Tom and I are in the E30 doing our bit right now, Thaddeus took Cameron back to his house to score more meth. The E30 needs its meth fix and refuses to boost properly unless it's properly methed up.
As far as like the chassis and the wheel and suspension setup, I'm on H&R race springs with Bilstein Sports. It's the common, you know, spec E30 setup. I have drop hats in the front to get the ride height a little bit better. I'm on, you know, just an Ireland Engineering 22mm front sway bar, 17x8 Oz wheels. They're E36 fitments. They're 5 lugs, so I needed to run adapters to get them to work. My brakes are stock size, but they have Hawk pads and they're just Brembo blank rotors. For tires, I'm running the stock tires off of a Subaru STI, the 225/45, you know, 17s. They make a really good autocross tire, but they do not fit on, you know, stock E30 fenders. So I've had to, you know, team up with a guy in California who can, you know, custom make me these fenders.
Bolted-on fender flares aren't always my favorite, but something about 80s cars, they really work. The brakes on Cameron's car would be fine if this was running stock power. 168 horsepower, plenty of power up there to stop. But even with upgraded fluid, Hawk track pads, the rotors are still very small and the calipers are still single piston calipers. So on this road, driving fast, I'm able to get them very, very hot to the point where I'm a little worried. Now, before you get down Cameron's throat about doing power before brakes, recognize this. He built the turbo by himself, and brakes are really expensive, and there's no way to cheap out on them. If someone knows a value solution for E30 brakes, please let us know in the comments. I'm sure Cameron would appreciate it.
It's unpredictable. You know, one minute you have traction, the next minute, you know, you're driving sideways down the road, and you can't even, you know, merge lanes going straight. Plenty of burnouts. It's always exciting. It never gets boring. You know, you can drive it sideways. Oversteer is basically all it does is oversteer. Like, there's not understeer. You just touch the gas and you're sideways.
Engine is very strong as I pull out of this corner. Now, it's hard to put a price or a value on a car like this because Cameron did so much of the work himself. You know, and who knows what that would have cost in shop labor rates, but as a speed per dollar value, I'll put this right up there in the same level as that RSTI from earlier in the season. Not much money invested. I'd be amazed if this car cost more than 10 or 12 grand in actual money to build. Same as those RSTIs, very fast for dollars spent. I get why people like these things now. And mad respect to a young dude with very limited resources building a stupidly quick one in his garage.
You really do have to admire a kid with limited resources and using his car as his own personal tuning academy who stays committed to a project like this for so long to the point where it becomes a business. All the work on this E30 he's done while teaching himself how to do it. How many people do you know who've taught themselves not just how to build a turbo system that works, but body work, paint work, suspension tuning, ECU mapping, designing, building, and then selling fender flare kits? This little red car and its baby-faced owner are a shining example of grassroots tuning done right.
Couple of takeaways from today. One is that the E30 is, yes, an excellent platform for going fast, and it's good for adding boost with its low compression bottom end. Two is that if you learn enough off of YouTube and have enough free time, you can turn a pedestrian E30 into a Corvette beating car for probably less than $10,000. And three, judging by the fact that all three of these cars behind me that haven't been here before have Cameron's turbos on them, you can also make a business case for it. How about that? But if you want one, you better buy it now, because Lemons is taking all the good ones. I'm Matt Farah, and I will see you next time here on Tuned.